It had been a long day, longer than I expected moving into my new apartment. Boxes were stacked in every corner, the faint scent of fresh paint mingling with the musty smell of old wood, a scent that seemed to cling stubbornly to the walls. The air was thick with the mixed feelings of excitement and exhaustion. Finally, a fresh start, a new chapter in my life. The building itself was an old brick structure, the kind that looks as if it has stood watch over the city for 100 years or more. The bricks were faded and cracked in places, ivy climbing up the side like ancient veins. The windows were tall, framed by peeling white paint, with the occasional flower box left by a long-gone tenant. Inside, the floors creaked underfoot, the boards sighing softly with each step. I had to admit it, the building had character. It whispered stories to me, stories I wasn't quite ready to hear. The ceilings were high, the kind of high that makes your voice sound small and lost. The walls seemed to absorb sound, making everything feel muted and slightly distant, as if I had stepped into a sepia-toned photograph. My bedroom window faced a narrow street lined with similar old buildings. From where I stood, I could see directly across to the apartments opposite, their windows glowing warmly with the soft yellow light of evening lamps. The street was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic, and the occasional rustling of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. I took a deep breath and let the silence wash over me, feeling a strange calm. The city felt alive but distant, like a secret world I was only just beginning to glimpse. On my first night after unpacking the last of my things, I sat by the window with a cup of tea. The steam rose gently from the cup, curling and twisting in the cool night air. Outside, the city noises had softened, replaced by the soft hum of streetlights and distant cars driving slowly along the wet pavement. As I gazed out, my eyes caught a shadow moving in one of the windows across the street. A man. He stood completely still, framed in the dim light of his room. His figure was tall, thin, and for a moment I felt his gaze pierce right through my window. I blinked and looked again, but he was still there, unmoving, like a statue carved out of the darkness itself. I told myself it was nothing. Maybe he was just watching the street, lost in thought. But something about the way he stood made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. He wasn't just looking outside, he was looking at me. Night after night, the man appeared at the same hour, just after midnight. I would find myself drawn to the window, waiting, half afraid, half fascinated. Sometimes the room behind him would be dark. Other times a faint light would glow behind his silhouette. I tried to catch a glimpse of his face, but it was always in shadow, and no matter how long I watched, he never moved. One night, out of a strange impulse, I flicked my bedroom light on and off twice, a quick signal, almost like a Morse code greeting. From across the street, the man raised his hand slowly and flicked his own light on and off twice in response. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Who was this man? How did he know I was watching? And why had he been standing there every night for years? Curious and unsettled, I asked the building superintendent about the apartment across the street. That place, he said, frowning. Vacant for decades. No one's lived there in 20 years, maybe more. I couldn't explain it. As the nights passed, the man began appearing earlier in the evening. Sometimes I caught glimpses of faint movements behind him, shadows shifting as if someone else was there, just out of sight. Then one night the lights in his apartment went completely dark, for hours, but at exactly 3:33 a.m. the glow returned. This time the man was no longer alone. Two more shadowy figures appeared behind him, taller and darker, their faces hidden in the gloom. I closed the curtains, but sleep no longer came easily. Days turned into weeks. I tried to tell friends, but they dismissed it as exhaustion or imagination. One morning, I went outside to look at the building directly. The windows were boarded up, the door locked tight. No sign of life. I don't live there anymore. But sometimes when the city is quiet and the rain taps softly against my window, I still see a flicker of light in that old apartment. And I wonder if the man in the window is still waiting. The second night, as I sat by the window, I tried to shake the feeling that I was being watched. The air had grown colder, and the faint glow of street lamps seemed dimmer, as if something had swallowed the light. I wondered about the man's story. Who was he? Why had he stood there so long? As the minutes passed, I began to notice small details. A crack in the window pane, a flicker in the light behind the silhouette, the gentle sway of curtains that hadn't moved before. I felt drawn to him as if his stillness held some secret meant only for me. That night, I dreamed of walking across the street, opening the door to the old apartment. I stepped inside a dusty room filled with faded wallpaper and shadows that seemed to pulse with life. I reached out my hand and the man appeared before me, his face finally clear in the soft light. His eyes were deep pools of sadness and longing. I woke with a start. The man was gone, but the room across the street was still lit. Over the next week, I found myself drawn into a strange rhythm. Every night I would finish my day's work, make a cup of tea, and wait by the window for the man's arrival. Sometimes I thought I heard footsteps behind me, soft, deliberate, but when I turned, there was nothing but empty room. I began keeping a journal. Each night I recorded the time the man appeared, the details of his posture, the color of the light behind him. The patterns were odd. On some nights the light flickered in a slow, steady pulse, like a heartbeat. On others it glowed bright and then dimmed suddenly, like a fading breath. Once I saw the man hold something, a small object that caught the light, reflecting a faint blue shimmer. I asked a neighbor if she had ever seen the apartment occupied. She looked at me strangely, then shook her head. "Not since I moved here," she said. "The days grew shorter, the nights colder. One evening, I caught a glimpse of a woman standing behind the man, her outline blurred and indistinct. She looked like she was reaching out, her hand trembling. I blinked and she vanished." It was a rainy night when things changed. The rain fell in thick sheets, beating against my window pane with a relentless rhythm. Thunder rolled in the distance, and the city seemed swallowed by shadows. I sat by the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching as the man appeared. But this time he was different. He was no longer standing still. He was pacing slowly, back and forth, as if trapped in an invisible cage. His hands were clenched into fists, his shoulders hunched. Behind him, the two shadowy figures I had seen before emerged, their faces still hidden in darkness. The light flickered wildly, casting strange shapes on the walls. Suddenly, the man stopped and turned his head sharply, as if sensing my presence. He raised a hand and pointed directly at me. I froze. The rain drowned out all other sounds, but in that moment, I heard a faint whisper, so faint I wasn't sure if it was real or in my head. "Don't come over." I closed the curtains and backed away from the window. Sleep did not come that night. Pause. 30 seconds with distant thunder and rain. The following morning, the sunlight felt harsh and unforgiving. I walked outside, determined to understand what I had seen. The building across the street was silent and empty, its windows boarded, its door sealed tight with rusted locks. I circled the block, trying to find another entrance, but there was none. I spoke to the superintendent again, who gave me a long, searching look. "There are stories about that place," he said quietly. "People say it's haunted. that the family who lived there disappeared one night, without a trace. I asked when that was. Over 20 years ago. That night I returned to my window. The man was there, but no longer alone. 3 figures stood side by side, their outlines blurry but unmistakable. The light was dim, but their presence was heavy, like a weight pressing against the glass. I whispered to myself, "Who are you?" And for the first time the man smiled. It was a small, sad smile, but it was there. I closed my eyes and felt the room grow cold. Weeks later I moved out. The man in the window stayed behind. But sometimes in quiet moments I think of him. I think of the silent apartment across the street, and I wonder what stories the old building holds. Stories waiting for someone brave enough to listen.